The War Council of the Apex Dominion had never fallen silent so completely. Varkon, senior warrior of the Thraxian clans, stood at the strategic holotable when the doors hissed open. His 6 eyes narrowed instinctively, claws flexing against the projected star maps. Around the circular chamber, 24 of the galaxy's most feared predator species turned as one. Thraxians with their chitinous exoskeletons, Kelvorian pack hunters with their serrated fangs, Zefkari winged reapers whose talons could split starship hulls. All of them stopped breathing when they saw what entered. A human. Small by Dominion standards, bipedal, soft-skinned. The species that had puzzled the galaxy for 3 cycles since their introduction to the greater civilization. Neither apex predators nor cowering prey, yet somehow both and neither. But it wasn't the human that made Varkon's battle-scarred heart skip. It was what she carried. 2 Thraxian cubs, no older than their second molt, clung to the human's torso. Their small mandibles clicked softly against her shoulder, their undeveloped carapaces still soft and vulnerable. One was whimpering, a sound Varkon had only heard once before, when his own nestling had been caught in the Scourge Wars. The human, Seline, according to the identification protocols, walked with steady, unhurried steps toward the center of the War Council. Her eyes, those peculiar forward-facing predator eyes, swept across the room with something that wasn't fear. It was warning. "Honored warriors," she said, her voice low but carrying clearly in the stunned silence. "I found these 2 in Sector 7 of the refugee camp. Someone left them in a collapsed habitat during the evacuation." Varkon felt something ancient stirring in his combat-hardened mind. The cubs belonged to the Kresh clan. He could tell by the crimson patterning on their nascent exoskeletons. The Kresh had been annihilated 3 rotations ago when the Void Swarm descended on their colony world. These must have been survivors lost in the chaos, lost, abandoned. As cubs often were when survival demanded terrible choices, the human adjusted her grip, and Varkon saw now that she'd fashioned a makeshift carrying sling from what appeared to be her own jacket. The cubs were secured against her chest, their small claws tangled in the fabric. One of them made that whimpering sound again, and Seline's hand, small 5-fingered, without talons or claws, rose to gently stroke its head. "They're dehydrated," she continued, "and they haven't eaten in at least 2 days. I've kept them stable, but they need proper care. Medical protocols for Thraxian young. I'm told you would know where." "Why?" The word left Varkon's mandibles before he could stop it. Seline's eyes found his across the holotable. "Why what?" "Why would you?" He gestured with one massive claw at the cubs. "They are not your species, not your clutch. In war, the weak are—" "Don't." The single word cut through the chamber like a blade. Seline took a step forward, and several warriors instinctively stepped back. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." Varkon had faced down Void Swarm assault waves. He'd led charges through quantum fire. He'd earned 17 battle scars across his carapace in single combat. But something in this small human's voice made his words die in his throat. "I don't care about your warrior codes," Seline said quietly. "I don't care about the logic of survival or the mathematics of war. These are children." Her grip tightened protectively around the cubs, "And where I come from, you don't leave children behind. You don't calculate their worth. You don't decide their acceptable losses." "We are at war," growled Kelvorian pack leader Thresh, his hackles rising. "Resources are scarce." "I know." Selene's expression didn't change. "I've read your reports. Energy reserves at 40%. Medical supplies stretched thin. Fleet casualties mounting daily. I know the numbers." She looked down at the cubs clinging to her chest. One of them had stopped whimpering, its mandibles now working softly against her collarbone. A feeding behavior, Varkon recognized, that Thraxian young exhibited when they felt safe. Safe, with a human. "But here's what you need to understand about my species," Seline continued, meeting Varkon's eyes again. "We're not the strongest in the galaxy. We're not the fastest or the most advanced. We don't have natural armor or weapons. But we have something that's kept us alive through ice ages and plagues and world wars and extinction events." She paused, and Varkon found himself leaning forward despite himself. "We carry our young," Seline said simply. "All of them. Even when it's illogical. Even when it's dangerous. Even when they're not ours." Humans have carried children through burning cities and across frozen wastelands and past every predator evolution ever created. We've built entire civilizations around the principle that children are sacred, that they're everyone's responsibility. The chamber remained silent. Your war council is trying to decide which colonies to defend and which to sacrifice. Seline continued, her voice steady. I've seen the projections. You're calculating acceptable losses, drawing lines on maps, making the hard choices. She shifted and the cubs adjusted with her, their small claws gripping tighter. But these two don't appear on any of your strategic maps. They're not combat assets or resource calculations. They're just cubs who lost everything and were left behind in the chaos. And I found them. And now they're my responsibility. Barkhan felt something crack in his chest, not his carapace but something deeper, something he'd buried under cycles of warfare and survival logic. He remembered his own nestling decades ago, remembered the instinct to protect, to shelter, to carry them to safety even when battle raged around them, remembered when being a warrior meant more than just knowing how to kill. Slowly, deliberately, Barkhan lowered his head, a gesture of profound respect in Thraxian culture, reserved for acts of ultimate courage. Around the chamber, one by one, every predator warrior did the same. Kelvorian pack leaders, Zefkari reapers, battle-scarred veterans who'd forgotten what it meant to protect rather than destroy, all of them bowing to a small human carrying two cubs that weren't her own. The Kresh clan medical facility is in Sector 12, Barkhan said quietly. I will escort you personally and... He paused, mandibles clicking with an emotion he hadn't felt in years. The cubs will want for nothing. On my honor. Seline nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Thank you. As she turned to leave, the younger of the two cubs lifted its head, mandibles clicking softly, a sound of contentment, of trust. It nuzzled against her neck and Barkhan saw Seline's hand rise automatically to support its small body. Such a simple gesture. Such a human gesture. After she left, the War Council stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, Thresh spoke, his voice rough. Perhaps we've been calculating this war wrong. Barkhan looked at the holotable, at the maps marking colonies for sacrifice, at the cold mathematics of survival. Then he looked at the doors through which a human had carried two abandoned cubs. Perhaps, he agreed. We've forgotten what we're fighting for. He reached for the holotable controls and began redrawing the defensive lines. There would be no more acceptable losses, no more abandoned colonies. If a human could carry two cubs through a war zone, then the Apex Dominion could damn well find a way to protect their own. After all, they were warriors. And warriors, Barkhan realized, didn't just know how to fight, they knew what was worth fighting for.